I think looking back, it's something that was kind of lingering, but it's spring training, and it's very normal to kind of have to work through some stuff. So I didn't really give it much credence. Just kind of thought it was something I was working through. My last start was able to go out and pitch through that, so I thought kind of got over that hurdle. And then in my bullpen yesterday, just, still felt just a teeny bit of something. So when I looked back, when I thought I was over it and I still felt something, I kind of connected the dots. My velocity was down a little bit in my last start, and that was really the main thing that I was like, well, if something's going on that's causing my velocity to be down 1 or 2 miles an hour, I've dealt with a lat for a couple times in my career, and it's just not something to mess around with at all. I missed, better part of 3 months one time. So in my mind, it was, let's be prudent here, be smart, and get it looked at. So that's what I did.
Terry's major and lat are in a very similar area, so that was what was concerning to me. To be honest, in talking with a couple doctors, this isn't obviously best case scenario. Best case would have been, hey, there's nothing there and you're just sore. But I would think that this is probably second best case. Very, very minimal. And for me personally, having it not be the lat, that's what I was most concerned about. So, yes, a similar area, and the muscles kind of work in conjunction. Right. So that's why I was thinking that. The fact that I'm going to be able to continue to throw is showing how minor of an injury it is. But still, there is something there. If this was a different point in the season, particularly late in the year, I think pitching is definitely on the table. Playoffs, and I'm definitely pitching. But being the beginning of the season, coming off of spring training, it just makes too much sense to not push it right now. And like I said, risk 3 months when it could be much less than that.
Did they give you a timeline for it?
Well, I think we're going to get rescanned in a week when we get back to New York. From there, I don't think I can give a specific timeline. I don't anticipate it being long, just based on how I feel, based on how I felt throwing, kind of putting all the pieces together. I take a lot of pride in being out there, and was very much looking forward to being out there in a Mets uniform for the beginning of the season. But, I think in my history, when I've had an injury, it's an acute, you feel something go, or you get tight right after. I never had any of those experiences, which is why I was like, all right, this is just spring training, breaking it in, normal aches and pains. And then once you kind of work through it, then it's, steady Eddie for the rest of the year. So yeah, and I think I noticed something before my last start, but it was not concerning enough at all to remove myself from the game. Just thought it was general soreness, and then, like I said, once I got through that start, it was like, all right, got through it, we're good to go. On to the next one. Let's get ready for my first start of the season. And then in the bullpen, when it wasn't quite right, is when I knew should probably let discretion be the part of valor. Yeah, you don't have to build back up. You keep everything moving. You don't. When you shut things down, you gotta build them back up. And as a pitcher, that sometimes is the longest part of a comeback from an injury. So to be able to keep throwing is a huge benefit. Taking a day or two off doesn't set you back. When you start taking off 3, 4, 5 days, I think is when you start your muscles and everything, and your cuff and everything start to tighten down. So you want to prevent that from happening if possible. So I think I'll probably give it a day or two, just let things settle down for no other reason than it just makes sense, and then regain throwing. In all this, great news was that the doctor said my shoulder looks like that of a 20-year-old. So that's always nice to hear as a 40-year-old. Yeah, it feels like crap, especially personally. Not the way I wanted my Mets tenure to start, that's for sure. Like I said, I put in a ton of work to not have things like this happen. We are athletes, and unfortunately, when you're working at a high level of intensity, stuff like this does come along. I'm just very thankful that it's as minor as it is, but it still doesn't subtract from how I feel, and I take a lot of pride, and I love pitching. I just want to be out there, and to not be able to do that, and especially with a new team and a new fan base, doesn't feel great. It sucks because it's the beginning of the season and it's spring training, but I mean, I've never been part of a team from start to finish, no matter how good of a team, whether it was a World Series winning team or playoff team or whatever, that didn't deal with injuries throughout the course of the season. It just seems like it piled up a little bit at the very beginning of this season. But maybe we're getting it all out of the way now. I'm an eternal optimist. So maybe we're getting them out of the way now, and then once we start hitting the stretch and the dog days of summer, we're rolling along and everybody's healthy and playing great baseball.